Okay, if everything is right, I have to check. We are live in this live masterclass on Sunday evening, and I have to look on my computer, 30th of July 2017, in case you watch this video much later. So tonight it's all about Bach, Temperate Clavier. My name is Wim Winters, I'm a keyboard player. My channel Authentic Sound is all about sharing the beauty of the music from Bach to Beethoven with you, where the word discovering is actually in the middle of everything. Diving into actually all kinds of things that we can find to dive into, and hopefully to inspire you as a musician or as a listener. That really would make my day. So tonight we're going to dive into some performance aspects of the Temperate Clavier of Bach, Book 1, Prelude and Fugue number 4 and 5. So that's the C sharp minor and the D major. And my guess is that in this hour we will spend a lot of time on the C sharp minor, because there is really a lot of things to say about that, also on the D major, but we'll see how it goes. If you have questions already now for me, just leave them in the chat. You will see that we have changed a little bit our setting here, since you cannot see it actually, but the chat is now being recorded as well. It's so valuable also always to me to reread the things you have written. And since last live streams, you have given so great feedback that Anya and I thought, well, why not have a screen capture of the chat, because YouTube is getting rid of the live stream chat after the video is being processed as a regular video, which is of course a pity. And so the things you're writing now are on screen as well, which is great also for people who are watching this later. So before we start to dive into Bach, I would like to give a little shout out for my patrons on patreon.com, because they are officially, so to say, sponsoring financially these videos of these live streams, which is a great feeling in a way that they make more possible than they sometimes believe. And literally for one cup of coffee, not literally coffee, but the value of that per month, you could support us there. If you would like to join that small and growing community, we have special videos there. We have also one monthly hangout together with video calls, so that we have more interaction even than here on YouTube. So that would be great if you could just have a look there and see, because Authentic Sound is going to do a lot of projects in the future, and we can use all help for that. But that being said, over to Bach, and to welcome some of you. I see the chat is really filling now. Michael, welcome, great to have you. V. Elliot, good evening to you. Nikos, great to have you back. Martin Clemets, great to have you as well again. My mother is here, which is always great also for me. Mohamed Al-Nahar, certainly mispronounced your name, sorry for that. Hello again. Okay, so you have seen that Anya is in the chat, and she's really active as always. So I would say go ahead, and if I miss something that you've asked me, then Anya will give a big yell. You will hear her screaming through this microphone, and then I will stop immediately and pay attention to what you have asked. Tolga, guten Abend also for you. I should not talk in German now, because it would be dangerous. That would result in a very weird kind of English, German, Dutch kind of language, as you see on the videos with Loren sometimes. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to dive into Bach, but not without saying hello to Sophie as well. She's my daughter, 12 years old, and she is already on the live stream of her daddy. It's really weird that those children are growing up so fast. I was thinking on starting with the fugue of the C sharp minor, and then diving into the prelude, because there is a lot to be said on the prelude. You have heard my recording on that, and to some a surprising slow tempo, but that we are going to talk about in a minute. For the fugue, I would say that's a gigantic piece, and to give you just one tip, that as I approach those pieces, and again for me it's also not easy, because it starts slow with really slow notes. I give you a few bars. And at the end, the 8-note structure comes much later. In case you are not familiar with the score, I can give you just a glimpse so you see that it starts with very slow alla breve notes. It's an alla breve, by the way, so you will not see 16th notes, you will see 8 notes as the fastest note value, and you see it ends with 8 notes. So in one way or another, this piece is speeding up from whole notes, as you have in the beginning, to quarter notes and to 8 notes, which is a doubling on doubling, it's quadrupling. I hope that's a good English word. So if you have something like that, it's really important to have a very steady tempo, whatever movement you like to choose. It's not, I'm not discussing the tempo, so to say, but if you choose a tempo at the beginning, you should be really sure that you can manage and maintain that same tempo until the end, and that's really hard. So by practicing that, I start with the 8 notes, finding there a really good balance of movement and expression. So for instance, if I just start here, and I feel this movement of the da 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 di dam ba di da da. So it is an alla breve. It's really complicated alla breve in the way that it is really a lot 5/4 fugue, you know. But once you feel that movement of heavy beat at the first, and then the second half note actually you have the light beat, then you start to feel this movement, and then we go to the beginning. So once you have this, then you start again. Da da di da di ya da dam bum. So once at the 8 notes are, when the 8 notes come, you will not be surprised anymore. One strong accent per bar. And one. And then it continues, and then you have the 8 notes. Theme entrance. Theme here. And you continue then. So that's the way I'm practicing. I just jump to another place. And in the beginning, so and there is a certain moment where this tempo, where this movement is becoming really part of really you live it. It's and this kind of structure is something that reminds me very much to the swirling big fantasies. You know, the Holland music of these 17 or late 16th, early 17th century, and there you have also this long note kind of start, where Sweelinck was a really brilliant genius about developing that into faster note values. Might be an idea to try a Sweelinck piece out. So live with you, why not doing that? I just see if I can find it. Some people have asked me if there was a connection, because I was mentioning that I don't know if in the description box or just in one of the one-tip videos I was making. And if Bach, of course, was influenced by the Northern German organ music very much, and there you had this tradition of the Netherlands. Sweelinck, you have Scheid and Scheidemann, and there you have the line with people like Reinken, and they were in Hamburg, they were like Böhmen and Lüneburg, so they influenced Bach, of course, a lot, and they knew that music. How much music of Sweelinck that Bach has played, I don't know, but we just compare that. Let me just take the Chromatic Fantasy, which has been ages since I've played that. So we have, let's just compare it if the tempo works. Because Sweelinck is developing this more than Bach. He's developing this into 16th notes. So let's try this beginning. Also very long notes. The Chromatic Fantasy. So this works rather well. He develops this. Continues, and then you have here the development to the 8 notes. Different key. If you compare those both, so Bach and it is really close. It's actually interesting to me as well to do that, and tempo works really well. I hope you don't mind that I play Sweelinck for a minute now. That's been a really long time. see how far he has come from the beginning with these very long notes. Chom, just like by Bach. Chom, chom. Of course, Cyrillic is going further with 16 notes. I don't know this. Let's try. And then of course you come to a really border with my instrument. The key depth is too deep for this fingering. So beautiful moment here. Why not just finish this? Polyphony here. Something like that. That is really something I should practice a little bit more. But anyway, this tempo. It works the same way as with swelling. So also with these big fantasies of swelling, if you just start at the beginning without realizing what is coming, and maybe for such a huge work the basic tempo could be a little bit slower, but again the key depth of such a big 18th century clavichord is too much to have all these fast notes worked out. It doesn't work really well on my clavichord. It should have a fretted clavichord, and maybe even for that music in that 17th century was maybe the virginale or the spinetto, the harpsichord, a more common instrument. That's my feel. This music relates more to the clavichord. That's my feeling. So anyway, that's the same practice with these big fugues of Bach. So always look to the fastest notes, and then you have the tempo. Once you have the tempo feel, go back to the beginning. Okay. If there are no questions on this, then we come to the prelude. So let's see. Anja says something, so I better listen.
You should. Martin, I was watching the newest video of all of Bach earlier today, and in an interview the performer was referring to Madison key characters.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. That's about temperament. So Martin, yeah, I see it here. I was watching the newest video of all of Bach earlier today, and in the interview, the performer was referring to Madison's key characters. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with Bach. I mean, we've been talking on temperament a little bit. I'm about to make some Monday videos on my belief, so to say, on temperament, and so the thing is that when people started, and that's really how I think it developed. When we quote unquote started in the 60s with diversifying this praxis where we, and again we as a group, it's of course not me because I wasn't born even, but let's say what we call the pioneer, the first generation, the Leonard generation, and they were not so strong about it. It developed in the 80s more in a rigid form. The hip movement of what we today call the hip movement, of course, didn't exist. There was just a few people who were playing on period instruments. The whole movement goes way back to the early 20th century, but that's another story. And so reading all sources and understanding that there was a kind of diversity also in the 18th and 17th century, and moreover there was a kind of high standard of music making and composing, of course, that was something that they never had to defend. But imagine that instruments they were playing on were not taken seriously. I do remember that in the 90s when I started to play on my Erard piano, it was something why would you play on an old instrument where we have a Steinway? So that's really close. It's not so long ago. So when they started, that's my point. They had to diversify themselves from what existed. And so if people in the 60s and the 70s found sources on unequal temperament, they say, hey, that's a difference with the piano school. If they found the Urtext editions of Mozart and Beethoven, and they saw for the first time, imagine there was no Google, there was no IMS-LP library. They saw that the manuscripts and the first editions had this small written appoggiatura. They say, hey, all pianists play. It should be short. So that's again an element. And you have several of those elements that today, if you want to challenge those, it's really, really hard because you touch upon some kinds of foundation. And so the temperament of Bach, World Tempo Clavier, by definition today is unequal, which is very strange because you will not find one source that confirms that. The opposite is true. When people played and wanted to play in 24 keys, there was only one temperament that was given, that was the equal temperament. So today that's still a shock to many. There is no other explanation. And so Matheson writes about the key characteristics, but related to the church tonalities. And of course, you have, if you only play in 6 or 7 keys, there is no. Why would you then use equal temperament? Because the equal temperament is a kind of worst compromise of all, because all thirds become equal. That's not the point, but they all become very wide. In an unequal temperament, of course, the keys that you favor have much more beautiful thirds, and so much more. They're much closer to mean tone or to the way a choir is singing. So when musicians today refer to Matheson and the church tonalities and characteristics, they actually, I don't know in this case, but most often they go one step further and they say Bach used unequal temperament, but that's one bridge too far. Matheson is writing also about using the use of 24 keys, and then he says then you have to apply equal temperament, which started with Werkmeister. strangely enough, we all know the Werkmeister unequal temperaments, but we don't know the latest temperament of Werkmeister, which is the wohltemperierte Stimmung. I mean, how much closer you have to come to the demystification of the temperament of Bach. And it's strange today that still what we back in the 60s and the 70s found to diversify ourselves, I mean, again, talking as a group, which was necessary to exist because you have to oppose to exist. That's the nature of things. So there was a group born of early music which had different beliefs. That's basically what it was. We don't play equal temperament, we play unequal. We don't play long appositures, we play short. And still today that's been repeated over and over again. Not by everybody, of course, I'm generalizing really a big deal here. And it's, like I said in the Hippoleo video, it's a kind of, you get a kind of frozen scene by that. I anyway will make those videos on equal temperament because, I mean, if you're serious about looking to these sources, and I'm by far, I mean, I do read those sources, but I don't know them all, and I'm playing more than I read historical sources, but I dive sometimes into that and we talk to people, then it's overwhelming how much you find about wohltemperierte Stimmung, gleichschwebend, that's all there. And if you bring that out on a larger scene today, you would have difficulties. People would say, hey, that's because it touched what we believe are some foundations of early music, which isn't to me. So that's a long story short, because I think that it's inevitable when we talk about temperament and the wohltemperierte Clavier. And it might be shocking to some, but it shouldn't be. What's the point of playing this in C sharp major? I mean, there is no such source that tells you what the specific quality of the C sharp major is compared to the C major. I mean, there is none. And if you go then to C.P.E. Bach, which is often used as cause to prove, so to say, that even C.P.E. Bach was not playing in equal temperament. C.P.E. Bach is writing about this, I think, from the more practical stand, and he must have been an exceptionally well tuner, because he writes that if you want to play in 24 keys, you have to diminish most fifths a little bit. And that's the part of the quote that you will often find, even in the new Packard edition of C.P.E. Bach's book, in the introduction. They explicitly, actually, which is kind of weird, that the fabulous musicologist Tobias Playbuch who did a magnificent job by editing that book in 3 volumes. You have seen it on previous videos. I've shown that to you. So that's a magnificent work, but still in his introduction, when he goes to the 19th century translations and editions of C.P.E. Bach, where a 19th century source actually interprets that quote of C.P.E. Bach as that Bach had equal temperament, he feels the need to adjust that. And he said, that's not true, because even C.P.E. Bach had no unequal temperament, certainly not. He's going so far that he is in his footnote addressing some articles that go in that direction to counter them. Playbook really falls out of his role in this part of his introduction of that great work, and that's because you touch on a kind of belief system. But Bach continues in that quote by saying, by diminishing most fifths, you will get a situation where you have all thirds gleichrein, equal. I mean, that's another step further than what Werkmeister said, because I tune my clavichord in diminished fifths, like Werkmeister says, but that gives not as a result that you have gleichrein thirds. So, and that's a topic that would lead us way too far now. But of course, if you tune on your ear, you tune absolute. You don't tune proportional. And going up, you have faster beats, so you have a differentiation in thirds. But that's the tuning for Bach. I mean, the rest is just, I don't know. But let's call this an outing from my part. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Martin was it who asked. Yeah. Great. Okay, let's dive into something else. C sharp minor. And by the way, a key, the characteristic of a key, that's how I feel it, does not depend on the temperament. It's strangely enough, it's always there. So I cannot say in what temperament my instrument is tonight. I mean, it goes a little bit around. I mean, it's certainly not equal temperament, but it's towards equal temperament. And you will see that very good tuners who tune, like for instance, J.S.Bach, he's an exceptionally well tuner. He starts from a kind of Werkmeister, but he is stretching all kinds of things that all keys work. Sometimes he's on the edge. And then certainly with A flat C, I say it's too sharp, and then he admits, or we have it. I mean, that's of course it's theory where we're talking about here, and temperament goes and comes back, and sometimes I stretch one note to have a better sound. But that's the theory behind that. It's a wohltemperierte Stimmung Werkmeister 17.7. That of course is related to the wohltemperierte Clavier. What else had you thought? I mean, there are no such things as... Sometimes I think that we in the hip movement like too much the mystification of things, and it's sometimes it is just clear. Sometimes it isn't. Like for instance in the C sharp minor, what tempo do we use there? That's really difficult. I have made a video on that, and so I've played it like this. And as I was saying in that one tip video, but it is like I say that there, it's for me not very clear what this notation means, because if you would look at the notation, it would lead to a little bit faster performance. And I can understand also people who say, I'd like to have it a little bit faster. If you are used to that, this is certainly has been a very big shock, certainly the beginning. If you're used to then this is a shock, because you have the feeling that it stands still. But if, for me personally, looking to the effect of the piece, and that's of course something you can debate on forever. I mean, there can be something different for you than it is for me. But in any ways it is not very joyful. Going down this fifth, because that's what Bach does. It's just an ornamented fifth. And then this exclamatio. It's going from this C to that C. Sharp then. That's really symbolic. Gives for me a kind of effect that's really sad. And so I started to experiment with playing this piece in a kind of quarter note feeling, also accentuating accordingly. Two and one and so the effect worked really well, and you get a kind of sarabande feel. 1, 2, 3, very gentle, very noble in fact. And the difficulty then is to keep the same feeling throughout the whole piece, because once you are on this line where you want to repeat this feeling. There is a kind of weird use of energy here, in a way that you have to let, even within the slow movement, you have to let the tempo drop a little bit in order to have it bounce again. And these nuances are so microscopic small that once that you go over there, the piece is completely gone. So it's much easier to play it faster, as it is always easier, most of the times easier to play it faster, because your bandwidth is getting, you get more bandwidth for movement. The movement is increasing in speed, and so things are repeating more often and quicker, and so that's easier. Imagine or compare it to a movement, it's always circular. So the movement goes up, you need energy to go up, because otherwise you cannot go up. It goes, or bounces of a ball is the same thing. You come at your high point and then you go down, and you gain energy again to go up. That's not a tempo rubato. It is similar to that, but it's not a tempo rubato. This is, to me, an essential part of what I call a metrical feeling. And again, that's something different than what Lawrence Gardin is talking about, a metrical understanding of the metronome numbers. Also there it has some surfaces of, you can compare things, but this is within the beat, within whatever beat, whatever structure of the bar time segment you choose to play in, you have to feel this. And as long as you feel that, there's nothing that can go wrong. But again, here we are on the edge. We are on the top, bounce again. So I decided to go for that like this. I cannot play it faster. I cannot play it. I mean, if I play it like this, of course I can make something out of this. That would be not a problem. But I've struggled with that piece for a long time. And if I play it faster, you know what kind of image I have in my head when my daughter Sophie would run down here the stairway, which she does sometimes. I mean, with a lot of energy, can tell you that. It can be positive and it can be a little bit negative. But let's say she's enthusiastic of something. She runs down, she comes here and she starts talking to me or to Anya. And she's in her 12, she's entering that age that she's talking really fast. And you know what you have to do then? You have to record the message. In the middle part of your head is some recorder that slows it down, and at the right part of your brain you kind of understand what she's saying, and then you can respond. I mean, but that costs a lot of energy, and you can keep up doing that for a while, but not for a very long time. So I have that feeling here. If I play it in that tempo, I say ho 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 ho, I've missed something, and I play it again and I've missed again something, and I keep on missing something, messages that are in that music, I believe, if I play it faster. So that's the reason why I choose that tempo. And if we go to experiment a little bit with that, because I did, how slow can you go before you lose the tempo? That's an interesting question. And if you consider the whole piece, then you have, of course, other parameters, because you have a story to tell. If the music goes like this, there's a kind of movement that you should feel going forward. But just in the beginning, how much tension can you evoke? Evoke, I think that's the right word. Going down, you see the same circular movement, or the ball that's bouncing, you go down. How much energy can you evoke from that point going back? And the slower you go, the bigger the impact must be, because you have this energy going up. And that's remarkable how long that is. I give you an example for that. So listen to the first chord. So how long can we stay there? Because that's the first really long note. Have you heard what happened? Of course, I oversized this emphasis, but by making a long gap, a long accent here. You hear that, you feel that energy in the C sharp. And I stay here. I'm sorry, that was a really wrong note. But I stay so as long as I want. As long as I can feel the down movement, that's the trick. So going slow is never a problem. If you are familiar with this piece very well, if you're very well acquainted with this, with faster performances, then you will need time to. I cannot pull you from that side to this side. But once you're adjusted, it should be my task as a player, or you, if you choose such a tempo, slow sarabande feel, to have your audience over this. It's not a dead point. When the ball bounces, there it gets its energy to bounce back. That's the difficulty here. But listen what you can do and how here also. I mean, how beautiful is that? Energy. I play in bows. Ta-yam, pa-ram, pa-ram. And now the story starts. Now he starts telling. Dum, pum. And then I got a question from someone who said, yeah, we have these long notes. Shouldn't you take a tempo where these long notes are still sounding at the end? And for me, the answer is no. If you want them to sound, you just repeat them. But in one way or another, there is no need for Bach to... how can Bach know what instrument you are going to play? So the fact, even here, that these long notes die, they make so much room for what happened in the right hand. Listen. Hear this A. And then C sharp, listen to the left hand here. And now this is a really introvert and the ultimate sense. So this is somebody sitting in the corner of a forgotten building, even thinking about something. That's really, really sad. I mean, here you have such an example of a long note. If you don't repeat that, that's how I feel. I mean, I want to hear... Of course you want to hear that, that's at least what I think. Now the left hand is answering, going very deep to the lowest C sharp. And I have this chord, this 4-2 chord, as we say. We said in Amsterdam, giving hope. And the moment you rush in this movement, the piece is over. You have to trust that the moment that this ball bounces on the ground, you will find the energy to go back. And then he starts telling again. The end of the story, and then he continues. Dialogue. Question. So also this going up. That's the question for God, of course, and in this language. It's more than symbolic. This is also a very symbolic interval, diminished fifth. So there are no answers coming from heaven. This F sharp is really important. So here the structure gets really complex. I hope you can hear that. You have the upper voice, you have the bass voice, you have the voice in between. They all are going to kind of, as I see it, reflect on the same thing. So he started, he or she. And now they're developing that idea. They are really wondering, well, yes, I can hear your story, I'm wondering too. And that's so nice, and it gives such a relief when these voices start to interact. And important there is that you leave those voices in their independency. I hope that's correct. So if the right hand goes up like this, it has this motif, the left hand has this, that you also have a phrasing for the left hand to indicate that's a new element, but not in the right hand. It's so nice here, the left hand goes somewhere along with the right hand here. It is really so relieving. It's so nice. That's what makes Bach outstanding. And then this new climax. It starts here. But it goes higher now. That's a drill that I of course added. And if you go down a little bit further, see what the answer is. It's going down again. I mean, here you had the line going up. That was the highest note for which Bach has written the first book. His clavichord obviously went to D, but most musicians had a 4-octave keyboard at the time, so that's the highest note. He's Beethoven here. Beethoven uses also all his 5 octaves. He uses everything, so that's symbolic. And then you come here. That's a cry up, going up. And it's going down with a diminished 7th. And listen what happened then in the left hand. One long chain of notes going down. So I'm sorry. And then he goes upstairs, right hand, and downstairs, left hand. It's like in the Pathétique of Beethoven. It's like if we imagine the right voice to be the person, so to say, who has started the piece, he refuses to go down. So, but the tension that it takes to stay up and to go up and more up against the left hand is huge. And there is also for me a reason to believe that you need this kind of movement to emphasize this stairs going down. Let me show you. Here. And 3. So nice chord here. Again, up. And then here for me the music may stand still completely, because there you have so much harmonic energy that it's a shock. This is really a shock. Of course you expect a very much nicer chord, but he is given. And there I make a pause. On the recording not so long, but I should not be afraid of doing that. But I know on a recording is a kind of like a photograph. It's taking an image of something. It deprives that three-dimensional look with one dimension. And if you are making a recording, and I would have such a long pause there, it might work, it might not work. It's something I have to figure out. But listen how long you can wait. And then tempo. Going down, going down. So one other thing that I could add to this is that I believe that such a performance is possible on a clavichord, on the piano, but I don't think on a harpsichord. A harpsichord forces you to play in another way. This kind of Empfindsamkeit that you hear now is what the clavichord can evoke. I'm not opening a discussion here whether you can play it on, cannot play it on harpsichord or any other instrument. That's not what I want to say. I'm only saying that you will have difficulties on a harpsichord finding this kind of emotional energy that the clavichord just gives. It is there. You can make sound. You can play with the strings. They can bleed, so to say, as Immanuel Bach said. Like for instance here. I mean, it draws you over the bar, like a singer would do. Also, this release that you have, pianissimo, gives really, it has a meaning. I mean, it becomes having a meaning if you do it like that. So, I don't know if this makes sense. This is just really, how I think about it. Okay. I don't hear something from Anya. So probably she just answered all your questions. Just looking through your chat as I'm reading now, I see you have, okay.
Martin wonders if this piece would work as a duet for two instruments.
As a duet? Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know. It depends on what the approach is, and also what the background of the musicians is and what the instrument they play on. You need, well, I'm just thinking now, this is an interesting question. What other types of instrument you should... If you would play this on the violin, this beginning theme, would probably work great. I think this would be a great piece for a quartet. But then you need players who take the risk. Because on the clavichord, it's certainly easier because of the short duration of tone, the relative short duration of tone. On the violin, and if you have this, would have this on a string quartet, they have to control everything. I mean, really, of course, they only have to control, quote unquote, one voice. But to incorporate this feeling of the but I think it potentially could work great, actually. But at the same time, I believe that we don't educate our musicians today, and we again, quote unquote, to search for such effects. I believe really strongly that our time is too much focused on motorical emotion than harmonical emotion, and that we still are in the kind of late industrial times where we are fascinated by technique in a way. And of course, if you play Bach, that's very far from the 19th century and 20th century bravura pieces. But still, I can, like we were talking on this metrical feeling of this tension, but within the beat or within the note, within the movement, there's something very different than like you have, for instance, in this big romantic pieces where you have this tempo rubato feel that goes, and you have these long sentences that end, in Wagner's case, almost only at the other side. And in one way or another, if I play together with musicians, you can wait for the question, well, we have to play the tension bow. The tension bow has to be there. And that's the way that we are educated in. You have to feel ya da 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 da. You have to feel that, and I believe that's not necessary. And as I feel it, is not how they played in the 18th century. They were within the beat. They were strong and light beats. So, but that's just really talking in general. Frankly, I don't know how it, but I believe it could be great. So. And playing fast is not forbidden, of course. And if you hear the swelling piece that I just was citing, I've played that piece times after times. It was years ago, so I should practice a little bit more. But then coming to the fast notes, you hear the slow movement still. And again, that might be working better in a little bit slower movement. But then it's fascinating to hear these speedy notes, but they are not distracting you from this big movement. And I don't think that the tempi that I've chosen here, of course, you have a slow pulse. If you listen to, for instance, the Beethoven sonatas I did recently, I don't believe that they are slow. The pulse is slower compared to what we are used to here. And actually I should say that the absolute durations of the note are slower than the absolute durations of many performances such that we hear today. But the feeling and actually the pulse is often faster, because instead of thinking in half notes, you're going to count in quarter notes, which always is faster. Even if you speed up, you should double the speed then to come in the same feeling of fast pulses as I have in my performance. So that's all relative. And then some pieces can become very fast in your feeling, but in absolute duration slower. So, okay.
Mike is asking a question.
Mike asks, would you like to comment on your trill on the fugue theme? Yeah, you can do that, you can leave it. But I would say that this D sharp really is begging for a trill. You know what I think is related to that if you go back to Sweelinck and you see the connection, it is vocal music. So Sweelinck was, of course, much closer even to, Bach was very close to vocal music, but Bach lived in a time where this instrumental way of writing became, this is really a keyboard piece, but in all cases we are, as keyboard players, imitating other instruments and certainly singers. So if you would sing this long D sharp or play it on a violin, you would not need this trill, but on a keyboard it's just one note and there it is forever. So a trill is a kind of ornament added to long notes to make, to imitate a little bit the cantabile style of singers and string players. And that trill is really difficult because you have the beginning of the movement, and the trill really has to fit. So it's tricky for me too. But that's of course, that you have to take the risk there. But if I play this, I cannot promise that it works every time. And certainly not. I'm pushing this because also when the theme comes here, of course I'm taking a risk there as well, but yeah. And then here I've added something as well. I don't know if I would, if I'm going, we're going to record all these, re-record those pieces for on analog tape as we have done for the partitas. I don't know if I would be brave enough to play it like this. I like it very much, but I don't know. Equal temperament is enough, I think, to think about. Okay, so I see it's 10:36 p.m. here in Belgium. I was afraid we were not going to talk about the D major Prelude and Fugue, but don't worry, I will make, this will come back. The whole world temperate clavier and the D major. I've made some one-tip videos on that, and it's of course Martin's fault. Let me talk so much on the temperament thing, and that's also a question that I've answered here, and I will address it again in some future videos. I don't want to escape that question. Just ask a keyboard player, and I know many of you are in the chat now. What temperament do you play in? And it's all kind of, I know of great recordings that we believe in were unequal, but were equally tuned. And frankly, I don't, you get on a kind of discussion where people say, oh, I don't believe that, I don't think that, but that's not an interesting discussion. This sharing of experiences is what makes this thing interesting. And that's one of the basics where Anja and I came up, the idea to launch this Hipileo thing. Listen to each other. The crazier, the better if there is a foundation underneath that. But the crazier, the better in the sense that it's so long ago. How can we assume that we, just by looking back a few decades, know everything about it? There's so much things to be discovered. But then this discussion, when I believe, I don't think you're right, that's draining energy from many of us, certainly for me. Sharing experiences and be open about this, like the 60 generation was. It all closed a little bit in the 80s, I have the feeling, where this hip thing became a kind of institutionalized. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's how I feel it sometimes. But be open about this and know that whatever you're going to say, if you have a foundation or just an instinctual feeling, because that's something we should not forget that we are players. We play music, and that's another video I'm going to make about the 3 phases of doing research. It's really, really important that we have a platform, we have a society, even we have a scene where people say, hey, interesting, going to think about this. And then we are a big step forward. At the beginning of the channel, when I was talking about, no, not the beginning of the channel, but when I started to talk about the tempo issue, there's another thing that you shouldn't talk about. I was joking also about the Baroque police, and that's not a term that I invented. That's my friend Miklos Pani invented that. Oh, you play that with the upper note. You shouldn't do that. Instead of asking why, that's the more interesting question. But it's sometimes you get to feel like that. At the same time, I feel there is a kind of point where we are far enough from what happened in the 60s and the 70s that there is an opening for make this movement a movement again. And that's just a thought that might be a little bit exaggerated so late on the evening as we are now, but that's the reason for the Hipileo group. If you haven't seen that video, there's a Facebook group on Facebook, and I hope to so Martin, Martin asked, you're probably right about Bach's temperament, but he must still have been influenced by all temperaments, at least in the organ pieces, don't you think? No, I don't think in the organ pieces, for sure not. But I do think that the orchestras and the harpsichord, of course the harpsichord was the dedicated instrument for the orchestra. Immanuel Bach writes it explicitly. the clavichord is for solo music and the harpsichord is for orchestral music. Again, not saying that you cannot play this music on harpsichord, it's just what the manual is writing. But why would you tune, if you have to accompany an orchestra, why would you tune your harpsichord equal? Because you're not going to play in C sharp major, or you're not going to play in E flat minor. So, but organs, the B minor, I mean, or the E minor, you get harmonies that we today like in an unequal temperament because they are awfully false, awfully out of tune, and they say, yeah, there you can hear the emotion. But in fact, if you read Bach document, and there, for instance, what Bach was saying when he, in 1713, that early, visited the conscious organ in Halle. And that conscious was the father of the Heinrich Andreas conscious. You know, I've been a project manager on two rebuildings of all conscious organs. Magnificent project, but that's the son. And then Bach writes, it's a magnificent organ, but conscious needs to learn how to tune. I mean, many people make from that the organ was out of tune, but conscious, by then Christoph Conscious was one of the most established organ builders. He built there an organ with 3 manuals with 72 stops. And Bach didn't mean that Conscious couldn't tune, but that Conscious family, as many organ builders family like Silbermann, they were very old-fashioned. And Bach was not. So I read that quote as Bach saying, hey, you used an old temperament, use equal temperament, because then I can play my music on that. So that's my take on that. So for orchestral music, yes. Again, why would you use equal temperament if you not need that? That's the worst compromise you can make. On the other hand, having the 24 preludes and fugues, or the partitas, which is almost also in 24 keys, retuning for every key is something that you don't do. It doesn't make sense because first, Bach is modulating all the times, like César Franck. Moduler toujours is fashionable at the time, and secondly, it would destroy the stability of your instrument's tuning, certainly if you go very far from what you had first. Yeah, John, about the abbatiatura Halsey, yeah, and I'm not the person to do that. You know, I have made some videos on the abbatiatura with Mozart, also made a summary on Leopold Mozart's ornamentation system. There is a video on that. There's even a summary that you can download that I've made. You'll find the link, or Anya can look it up. But that's so complicated, really so complicated. So I can only give some ideas and some suggestions. Also there, I've performed to Turksima like that, but actually even looking only to Leopold Mozart. And then you see that early 19th century scores, they changed the notational system to this. And I've always wondered why they did that, because I've always learned that those scores, early 19th century scores, were a kind of untrustworthy because they changed the manuscripts, right? But maybe they were just giving the way it should be played, and it changes around 1800. But again, let us not dive into into that. It's really, really interesting. Leopold Mozart, but it's maybe too complicated to find. If you just go to my YouTube channel, Leopold Mozart, you will find a link. So, okay, this was a session with a lot of great things, I think. I mean, great in the sense that the tempo thing of the C sharp minor, I'm really happy to have the time with you to discuss that in detail. There, I really don't know. I'm a little bit talking in the blind. That's only my compass that's saying that's the direction. Looking to the notation again, that's for me something that I will have to study a lot more in this context, and maybe in some years I come to another conclusion, but I don't mind. I mean, that's for now the way I feel it, and I want to share it with you. And then the thing about temperament, that's yeah, something that the word needs to go out, and hope you take that just as a kind of personal reflection here from within my study room. Not telling you what you should do or should not do. That's far from what I would like you to think I would do, and I'm certainly you're not thinking that. So anyway, closing here this live stream on Sunday evening, 30th of July, and hope to see you next live stream. Is Thursday. We're going to record the next 2 sessions, and hope to be there with you, and for some other hopefully great videos on YouTube. And I just was looking for my button to stop the stream now. So thanks for watching. Again, if you have watched this live stream later and you want to stay on top of everything we do, also for the live streams, you get a notification if you subscribe and hit the bell icon next to the subscription button. That would be great if you would join our small community that is growing. And then we see each other very soon again. So thanks for watching. Have a good night or day, depending on the place on this planet where you live. And we see each other very soon again. Bye.